Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Cup. I am so honored today because I have Casey with me. Casey Roberts is a world traveling social media expert who teaches business owners how they can make their brand and business stand out online and scale their businesses via their socials. She is also a trainer for social media managers, helping them make their first 5K per month as a social media manager. Thank you so much for being here today, Casey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
Absolutely. I'm honored to have you. And I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got here today, and then we'll go deeper.
Oh, wow. That's a big question.
Yes.
I'm originally, if we go way back, I'm originally a South African born. So I was born and raised in South Africa. And then my family immigrated to Australia in 2010. So I was 16. And what happened in Australia is I just never felt settled. It was never, it just never felt like home. So the moment that I finished school, I started traveling around Australia, just trying to find my place that was home, if that makes sense. And I never really found it. And what ended up happening was I found it on cruise ships. So I ended up being a cruise ship entertainer and living and traveling on cruise ships for a couple of years. It was an amazing opportunity. I got to travel the world, and it was really how I got the travel bug. And I was like, yep, this is 1,000% what I want to do, full time is just travel. So while I was working on cruise ships, I absolutely loved it. But the pandemic, I worked all the way up until the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit, and that ended that cruise ship career. So what ended up happening was I came home from the cruise ships and I went back to Australia. I hadn't lived in Australia for 5 years. Came back to Australia, came back to lockdown and had nothing. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be stuck in Australia because Australia was we're not opening the borders until 2024. That's what they were saying at that time. We were locked down in Australia. And I knew my cruise ship career was over. I knew there was no way that I was going to be able to go back to cruise ships anytime soon. And even when I did, it wouldn't be the same. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do that. What I do have to do is I have to figure out how I'm going to make money online so that I can continue to travel. That was my main goal, because I was in corporate before I ended up in on cruise ships, and I hated it. I hated the 9 to 5. Earned a ton of money, had all the toys, but was working 365 days a year. It just was a never switch off. So I was like, there's no way I can do that. So I started, while we were in lockdown, I started looking into all sorts of different ways as to how to build a business online. And I just went into everything, researched everything. And I've always had a fascination with social media. I was always even when I was traveling, I wanted to be a travel blogger. So I was always I had no idea about social media, but I was like, oh, I travel the world. People they'll think it's cool. I want to just be a travel blogger. And obviously, again, pandemic ended that. I was like, well, that's not going to help. But I wanted to find a way that I could keep traveling, and dabbled in a couple of things. And eventually I ended up doing a program that taught people how to create online courses. And I was like, perfect, passive income. This is easy. I'll just build one killer course, and then I will build a killer course, and then I'll be made, and then I can travel. And obviously that is not how courses work. Absolutely not how courses work. You have to understand, marketing. You have to understand what you're actually teaching, and so on and so forth. So I ended up doing that course and made no money. And it was really, really frustrating. Eventually, someone was like, well, why don't you do one-on-one coaching? And I was like, God, being a coach, me? Who would want to be coached by me? And anyway, long story short, I ended up starting off as a confidence coach. And being a confidence coach, I ended up finding, again, I didn't know how to start a business. I didn't know how to run the business. So I ended up investing in myself, and ended up investing in this program with a guy named Rob Dial. I don't know if you know Rob Dial. No, so he's a massive podcaster. He's got a podcast called The Mindset Mentor, awesome person. I ended up investing into his program, and that teaches coaches how to build coaching businesses. And luckily, I was just at the point where I was I need to make this work. I need to actually crush it. And I just put like my foot on the gas, and I ended up becoming one of his best students, you know, making like hitting all the records, breaking all the records, and doing really, really well in my coaching business. So what ended up happening was all the other coaches were coming to me and they were like, how are you finding so many clients? How are you doing this? And I was getting all of my leads from social media. So when they started asking me, I was like, oh, you just do it like this, and you do it like this, and you do it like this. And after a couple of months, I ended up doing social media trainings more regularly as part of Rob's group and becoming one of Rob's coaches in the program, coaching his coaches on the social media side of things. So that's how I kind of stumbled into it. And I was like, oh, there's actually nothing out there to teach businesses how to do this. So let me figure this out, you know, like, and teach them. After a short amount of time, Rob ended up coming to me and he's like, hey, I want you to be one of my full-time coaches in the program. And I want you to become one of the accountability coaches. So actually teaching, like being one of the assistant coaches and teaching the other coaches in here how to build their businesses and run their businesses. And I want you to take over my social medias for me and be my social media manager. And I was like, holy cow. He has like more than 3 million people across his network, more than that now. And he had like multiple channels where we were putting out like 35 pieces of content per day, like on like across all these channels. Like it was just like this massive step for me, but I loved it. I loved every second of it. And I learned so much. So I guess I was like really gifted in that, given the opportunity to work with a ton of coaches, like straight off the bat, like under somebody else's name, like experience was basically being fed to me, which was really cool. And then eventually in June of last year, I decided I'm going to go out on my own. And I was like, no, you know what? I want to start building my own thing. I want to start building my own business and doing my own thing. So that's when I really transitioned from doing his social media management and doing his coaching, and then going all in on my own coaching business and my own, and that's kind of where I've gotten today. So now I live like in the US, and I'm a full-time like social media coach and social media manager plus trainer.
I love that. And, you know, it's so interesting too, because a lot of times we have this like path that we think we're going on, and then it takes a hard left or a hard right, whatever it is, but you're not going on that same path. And I love that you just kind of rolled with the punches as well with the pandemic, like wanting to be a travel blogger when, okay, maybe that wasn't going to work during the pandemic. I love the idea though.
I was like, well, that's what 100%, like people are so scared to start like their own online businesses because they're like, I don't know what the perfect thing is. Like, I don't know exactly what my niche is or exactly what I want to do. And you don't need to. Do you know what I mean? Like, would I have thought I would have gotten into social media in the beginning? Hell no. Like, I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I didn't build my business first. So I often say to people, like, don't wait to have the perfect idea or the perfect thing to start. Like, you've got to just start, and then your journey, like the path will unravel for you.
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, I'm right there with you. Like I was just like so resistant. If it wasn't perfect, I didn't want to start it. Like, especially when I started my business like 5 years ago, it's morphed over time. But like what you're saying too, it's, you just have to start. Like it evolves as you go, just like the social media evolved as you start really putting yourself out there and knowing that you're really good at it, but people were coming to you because it came so natural to you as well. Might have not been what you thought, but it's working out.
1000%. Yep.
And so I know we were chatting before this about just moving to the States and things along those lines. Could you tell us a little bit more about that process as a business owner, but also as just a citizen?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That was probably one of the toughest journeys and things that I've ever been on. So basically how I ended up happening, like I always wanted to move back to the US. Like I was sailing on cruise ships out of the US. All the coaches that I had, all the people that I was working with, like all my clients, they were all based out of the US when I first started. So it was always my plan to kind of move there. But what happened was, while Australia was shut down, like the borders were closed, I ended up buying a van. And I was like, because I had the travel bug, I now had the business that was doing really, really well. So I bought and built a van and started traveling around Australia in a camper van. And what ended up happening was I went straight up to like the Northern Territory of Australia, which is like the far north, like center of Australia. And because my best friend is in the Australian Army. And I was loving life. I was single. I was traveling. My business was doing well. I was like, sweet. And the second day I got there, she's like, I need to introduce you to somebody. I think there's a guy you'd really quite get along with here. And I was like, I don't want boyfriends. Like, I'm like on this journey, like I'm having a great time. Anyway, met him, and he was a US Marine. So the Marines, US Marines, do a deployment out in Australia once every year. Like 2,000 of them go out to Australia every year. Anyway, him and I met, and we just got on like a house on fire. Like we were just like, he's very high ranking, so he didn't really have to work very much. Like he had a very flexible schedule. I was traveling, so we just like wanted to go, and it was his last couple months in Australia. We were like, we just wanted to go do cool stuff together. You know, we went like shark cage diving, and we went and explored all the restaurants and just had like a great time together. And then when he was leaving, I was like, no, I want to come with. And basically what ended up happening, like my plans to always move back to the US got really rushed, because then I was like, okay, I want to move over to the US now and like be with this guy. But looking at all my options with the US, if you do not have a piece of paper that says you went to university, 90% of the visas are not applicable to you. Like you can't apply for any of them. Like even at that stage, I was working for Rob. I was earning a ton of money with him. Like I was a full-time employee pretty much with him. He couldn't even sponsor me because America was kind of like, well, why her over an American? She's not qualified enough. Yeah, she's skilled in her thing, but she hasn't been in that position for 10 years, and she doesn't have a degree to say that she's skilled in that position. So 90% of the visas that I could go for just weren't available to me because I didn't have a degree, or I hadn't been in my business for long enough, or in my trade for long enough. Then we were even looking at like fiance visas and marriage visas, and we were like, well, we don't want to cross that bridge. You know, we're not even together. We're only together a couple of months. We don't want to cross that bridge. So what ended up happening was I ended up going for what was called an E2 visa, which was a investor's visa. But it had to show that I had to invest $100,000 into the US economy, but into things that I couldn't get my money back from. So it had to be things like, it couldn't be real estate, it couldn't be cars, it couldn't be anything like that. It had to be marketing, advertising, corporate leases, things like that. So I had to spend $100,000 in the US of non-returnable money for them to deem my business as legitimate. And I had to be earning a certain income and show that I had employees and that my business was going to contribute to the US economy, not just like be what was called marginal. Like you had to make a marginal profit, not just enough to support yourself, but to support other people. Like that was you had to show proof of that, which my goodness was one of the toughest things I think I've ever done, because my business is set up. I don't have a lot of things that I needed to spend money on. So getting the money and like basically not throwing away, you know, $100,000, but spending it on stuff that I probably didn't need to at that time, and rushing spending things was probably what I needed to do, but I wish I could have done slower, if that makes sense. So it took me about 12 months with like all the lawyers' paperwork, the interviews, flying back and forth, like all sorts of things to get that all set up. And yeah, I got my interview in November last year, and I was back on a plane within 2 weeks, and I was like bawling my eyes out, and I was like, I'm here for good. This is it. So yeah, it was amazing, but it was really tough, but it was also amazing that I could. And all other lawyers that I spoke to, they were like, you're not going to get to the US. Like, there's no way. There's just no options for you. Like, they didn't even think that I'd be able to do the E2 visa option. Like, even the company that I hired, they were like, oh, it's going to be a stretch. But I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. You're going to watch me. I'm going to do it. So yeah, so I ended up like, I think I was just like, I couldn't believe it. Like in my first 2 years of business, I was able to build a business that could afford to spend 100,000 extra in a country that I wasn't yet living, plus support myself, plus fly back and forth from the US. I think I flew back and forth 12 times last year to Australia and back like to the US. I think I ended up counting like back and forth was like 12 times. So, which is not cheap. It's not a cheap flight. So I think I was, sometimes I'm just gobsmacked that it happened and it was able to happen, but at the same time, I knew it would. Do you know what I mean? I was like, there was no other option. Like I was going to make it work one way or another. It was going to happen. So yeah, and I did it, and I'm here now.
Well, it's a testament too to your perseverance and determination. And that seems like a thread throughout your life as well. Even though things like you hit certain points where you had to like shift, you were able to shift simultaneously, like after the cruise ships, and then having to go back to Australia, and then trying to figure out what those next steps were. And social media just kind of started to overflow in your lap because you were good at it, but also you were helping so many people. And when you started building your social media business, because obviously it's been doing very well, being able to move to the US as well, but what has been like the drive of building that business as you started going? Like, what were some of the pivotal moments in building your business?
Good question. Social media, I mean, I've just been really good at social media, but social media, as much as I love it now, I've always known that it's going to be a stepping stone into my next thing, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I've always known, like, I've always had this passion that I want to help other businesses. I want to show them. That's one of the main reasons why I started my business in the first place, not knowing that it was going to end up in social media. But I wanted to show people that it was possible to go live an extraordinary life without having to have millions of dollars or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was working in corporate and I wanted to travel. Didn't know how I was going to do it. Found cruise ships. And guess what? I didn't earn a lot of money on cruise ships. Like, it was terrible money, but it was so much fun. And I got to travel the world. And I met incredible people, you know, that I'm going to be friends with for life. So I quit my corporate job, which was really risky. And I was like, no, do you know what? I'm going to take action. I'm going to go do it. The amount of times as well, like, I've traveled solo just because I got tired of waiting for somebody to come with me. Like, I'm just tired of waiting for a partner or a friend or someone to come with me. And once I started traveling solo, I realized that it's way better to travel solo. Like, it's so much better to travel solo. Like, you meet more people, you have more freedom of your flexibility of your schedule. Like, it's just so much better. So I guess when I started my business, it was more like, I want people to see that they don't have to be stuck. You don't have to do the thing that you were told to do. You don't have to go to university to, you know, make money. You don't have to, like, follow. I've been very passionate about that. It's follow your heart. Like, I don't want anybody to get to 30 or 40 or 50 years old and go, holy shit, what have I done with my life, kind of thing. So I've been very, very passionate about that. And that's always been my driver for myself, because I'm like, I want to be extraordinary. I want to do the extra. I want to do the different. And I want to bring other people with me. I want to bring other people with me. But the only way I'm going to do that is I need to get myself to that point and then bring people up with me, like, teach them how to do it so they can come with me. So I guess that's kind of always been my driver. And I've always said, I mean, on cruise ships, I was standing on stage in front of 3,000 people every single week, acting like a fool and running presentations. And I just love it. Like, I love being on stage. So my goal was always to be a speaker, like a public speaker, or, you know, motivational speaker or something like that. So I guess that's kind of my driving force. And social media is the stepping stone, because it's the starting place for most businesses. You want to get to that place, you need a personal brand. You need a social media presence if you want to build the type of business that you want to build. So that's kind of how I ended up in social media, and how, like, it's my whole business and everything that's been driving me. It's one, I want to get myself to that point, but then I want to teach other people how to get there too and bring them up with me.
Again, it's lifting each other up. Like, you're not just going by yourself. It's with everybody too. You're learning it first, maybe, and then teaching others. But I love it because there's a lot of times, and escaping the whole like message and saying right now, of course, but when you as leaders, you grab the hand behind you, you're like reaching back. You're not just focused forward, like you're building, but you're also making sure that everyone's coming with you. And I think that's like a huge testament to who you are as a person as well. And I appreciate that. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, social media is the like foundation of starting a business in today's time. Maybe not a few years ago. I mean, it was definitely there, but I think it's been building and building. And it's, oh, what's your social media? Like, when you talk to somebody, instead of like a business card, sometimes it's just like Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever it may be. But I'm curious, because you have been on Instagram, what has some of the growth you've seen for yourself, but also for your clients as well when it comes to Instagram?
So here's a spanner in what I'm going to share right now. So a lot of people have seen my Instagram growth over the past 12 months, but something that they haven't seen is when I was speaking about making that, I had to spend $100,000 here in the US. One of the things you could spend it on was like marketing and advertising. Now I ended up finding this company. I went to a conference in Vegas last year, and they were hosting the conference. Like, they were the main host of it. They got people like Gary Vee. They got people like the Hormozis. They got, like, it was a full 3-day event with like back-to-back speakers, the biggest names in YouTube, in social media, in marketing, like all these like massive names. Anyway, this company, I ended up talking to them, approaching them, because obviously they're doing their sales pitch while they're running, the conference, and they've got all their sales team and everything there. I actually approached them because I thought they would be the perfect company for Rob, because at this stage I was trying to transition out of running Rob's social media because it was just getting too much for me. Like, 7 platforms with 35 pieces of content a day for one person was just getting too much. Like, I was totally burnt out. Loved it, but I was burnt out. So I approached them, and then of course their sales team started asking me about my business and started feeding me all the bells and whistles of everything that their company could do. And I was like, yeah, I understand building a personal brand. They looked at my page, which my page at that stage had grown to, I think I was sitting on about 25,000 followers, of like a really engaged, like beautiful network. Like, my business was crushing it. Like, I was loving it. I actually didn't need them. But what happened was they made it out like, if I wanted to get to that level and be one of those people standing on stage, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to be one of those, like, the speakers on stage. They said, we're the company to work with, and then I had to spend that money. So I was like, okay, let's do it. All right. $50,000 I invested in this company. And long story short, I thought I could trust them because they had all the, the people and all like the big names that they had there. They said they worked with like Snoop Dogg and Jay Shetty and Grant Cardone, and they've got photos with all these people. And I was like, amazing. Anyway, what they sold me was fake followers. All they did was they blew up my page with these strategies where they were, I don't know if you've seen those like giveaways where people, it's like, enter this competition and you could win $5,000, but you have to be following these people. All right. Those are terrible strategies. So the moment that they started, what happened was they started flooding my account with all these like people from these men from India and Brazil and Pakistan, and like people who are not in my network. They're not part of, they're not going to be clients or anything. And I started freaking out at them. And I was like, this is not what I wanted. This is not what you told me what would happen, so on and so forth. Anyway, eventually I had to have like massive fights with them. They didn't give me half of what they promised. And they just turned my entire page. They boosted my engagement. They boosted everything to the point where I had to put my profile on private. And I stopped creating content for more than 2 months because it just was getting blasted by the wrong people. So it was just damaging my accounts. So eventually I got them to stop all these strategies. And long story short, I'm about to get into like a massive legal battle with them, but they've just ruined, like they've really ruined my account. So, and everybody said to me like, oh my gosh, your following has grown so much. And I'm looking at, and I'm thinking at it and I'm going, not authentic. It doesn't sit right with me. And what was happening as well is people were starting to notice, and people who had been following me. And obviously I talk about organic social media growth strategies. I talk about, just organic, like being authentic and having all these things. But this company was making me look like I was contradicting myself, which I was. Like, in all honesty, like I was sharing all this stuff, but I paid for a service, which I didn't know that that's what they did. And they said, that's what all the people do. That's what all the big names do. And I was like, I don't want that. Like, that's not what I even said to you when we were doing the negotiation of all of this. That is not what I wanted. Anyway, long story short, getting into a huge legal battle with them. But with my page, because I'm like, no, this is not authentic. It's not real. You've hurt my engagement. So what's happening is not that I'm obsessed with the vanity metrics, not that it's about the vanity metrics, but what's happening now is that like the content that I'm putting out, the value that I'm putting out is no longer being seen by the right people. It's no longer serving an audience because the audience are just not seeing it because Instagram has just shut it down. because the people who were engaging, who were paid to engage with my stuff, are no longer engaging with my stuff. So long story short, I'm going to be starting from scratch and moving everything over to a brand new page, and building that up. And I feel really good about that because, one, I believe in the strategies that I teach, and I do believe that I can use it, and build it up. Two, I want it to be authentic. I don't want you to look at my page and second guess or look at my insights and go, did she buy followers, or anything like that. And the other reason is I want it to matter. I want it to reach the right people, and I want my message to matter. Like, I want it to be helpful. So I guess the reason why I share that, like, one of the things that I'm seeing on social media is, and especially with like Chat GPT coming out, and this new thing, which is amazing, but you can no longer grow on information itself. You can no longer have a business that's based on just information. Your business now needs to be based on a personal brand and a community, because information is now freely available. ChatGPT is just the next level. You can study, there's so much you can learn off of it, like, and the capabilities of it are just going to go next level. So if you are just trading on information, then you're going to be left behind. And what was happening is, like, my community, my connection, my what I really valued about it all was what was taken away from me. So that's why I'm starting from scratch. So with a message with social media trends, you've got to focus on personal brand, and people are going to follow people because they like those people, and they're going to be part of communities. People want to be part of communities. There's more than, for me, there's 1,000 social media coaches, millions of social media coaches out there, a million social media managers that can teach you how to do the same thing. But people come to me because they like the way that I teach, they like the way that I make them feel, and they like the way that my method and how I've done it. And I didn't want to lose that. So long story short, but like authenticity, community, and personal branding are the three biggest things I think people need to focus on moving into social media.
I couldn't agree more. And I love the transparency too. And I feel like that's why when we originally connected on Clubhouse, I was like, oh my gosh, I love what you were saying, because it was so authentic. And it's so unfortunate that there are a lot of companies out there that will take advantage and not give you all the information, or say that they're going to do something and not follow through on that and switch it up towards the end. But I'm so glad that you are pushing forward and recreating your page as well, where it is more true to you. And it's unfortunate that that does happen, and it happens more times than not. So I really appreciate you sharing that as well, because people are like, oh, we have so many followers. But you're right, it's the engagement. And a lot of times people get more sales, like if they have 1,000 followers versus like 100,000, because it's the authenticity. And what you're saying too, it's that connection piece. Like, it's being able to have those relationships with followers and building a community, because people want to feel like they belong somewhere as well, and being open. And I feel like that's what you do. You've created so many communities where you have allowed that. And it's just terrible that somebody tried to tarnish your name, and now you're taking it back.
Yes.
I like it. Power within.
Yes, exactly. And the only thing I could say is, like, I wish I'd done investing in yourself is one of the best things you could do. Like, it would never, like, this whole experience would never scare me away from making big investments into myself and my business. The only thing I would say is do your due diligence. Like, I just trusted the fact that this company, like, why would Gary Vee and the Hormozis come speak at this conference with this guy if he wasn't legit? Do you know what I mean? But they were so quick to take my money that they didn't even pay attention to what I wanted or what my business was. Do you know what I mean? So make sure that when you are investing, there's a lot of good people out there. There's a lot of really shitty people out there. But don't ever be afraid to invest in yourself and invest in your business, because I wouldn't have gotten to the point where I could afford to invest $50,000 if I hadn't invested in 4 other coaches prior to that. Do you know what I mean? So
yes.
Yeah,
it really is about investing, because I think too, personal development, we're always growing and evolving. When we stay stagnant, that's where you're not going to be able to change or move with the times or be left behind. Like we were just saying with the information piece, like building your brand, being authentic, creating community, and being more than just giving information, but it's who you are, because people connect with people. People buy from people that they like.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 1,000%.
So I know you've had a lot of clients, a lot of success. I would love to hear just like one or two client success stories from you, if you don't mind sharing those.
Yeah. Oh my
If you
gosh.
can choose.
Yeah, that's the hard part. The cool thing is because I've got two different programs that kind of do two different things. You've got the social media where it's just a social media side. It's like, hey, let me teach you how to launch a business, whether that be a coaching business, whether that be like an influencer business or whatever it is, a network marketing business. Once you understand the fundamentals of marketing and coaching, then marketing, coaching, and just like social media, then you can basically build whatever business you want, and even like understanding the psychology of marketing. I mean, you're a therapist, like the psychology of marketing, the psychology of people's needs and what makes them buy and, react and take action and things like that. So once you understand that sort of stuff. So, I mean, yeah, I've got clients one girl as well, she's a travel influencer now. Like she's built her page up. She's a full-time travel influencer. She lives in Thailand. And she just she works with brands. Like she's just having an absolute like killer of a time. I've worked with hundreds of coaches that like how to start their coaching business from the ground up. I'm working with an amazing lady at the moment. She's a coach for moms that are born with cleft-born children.
Oh, yeah.
So because her husband was born cleft, their firstborn child was born cleft, and she just talks about how trauma impacts that child and impacts the family from the moment that you get the cleft diagnosis, which happens like while the child is still in utero. But what happens is like the parent, like the mother, then goes stressed, and all the stress chemicals and nerve chemicals and everything that releases into then the baby and the fetus. It's all about, she teaches you how to like from the point of your cleft diagnosis to raising a healthy, happy child who is going to be visually different, all the things that you have to like come up against. So she was super scared to put herself out on social media. She was super worried about all of that, but we've been able to overcome that because she's got such a service. She's done all the work herself. She's got such a service that she can offer mums who that's not a common thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, who do you turn to? That's not common in families or something like that. So, I mean, actually, believe it or not, it is a common thing. Like 1 in 600 babies is born cleft or something like that. It's crazy. Yeah. So that's just really beautiful. And like, she's just, her business is just crushing it at the moment. And she's feeling so fulfilled because she's actually like being able to help that, but she didn't have the guts to do it with social media. And that's the problem. Like, how do you find clients to help when you've got 4 kids and you stay at home and you still work, and like, how do you get yourself out there? You've got to be on social media. So that's like the social media and coaching side. And then we've got the social media management side of things, where people are either using, like, they're coming into the social media management to either supplement the business that they already have. Like, we've got one girl who, she's a crazy talented musician. Like, she's just, she's going to be a massive name. Like, she's just going to blow up. But she doesn't want to have to work a day job while she makes music. And she wants to be able to be flexible to travel to gigs and all sorts of things. So she's doing social media management because, one, it's helping her own brand. And 2, she's able to service other musicians and other coaches and clients and everything. So she's making an online income and supporting her music career. Another girl is a professional dancer, and she knows she's not going to be she can't dance forever, because there is a shelf life to that. So she's starting social media management. So when she wants to make the transition, she's got there. We've got real estate agents. We've got other coaches that are doing there's just, it's so hard to pick like success stories, but it just depends on the business that you have and like what you want to do. And I mean, social media management, if you just Google what is the best online business to start in 2023, social media management's up there, because everybody has to be on social media, but a lot of businesses and a lot of business owners just don't have time to do it themselves. They just don't have the time. Like, they've got their own businesses they need to run. They know they've got families, they've got all of these things. They know they need to be on social media, but they just don't have the time to learn it and implement the strategies. And that's where a really good trained social media manager comes in. So, there's so many success stories.
I know it was going to be hard to choose. But I love that you broke it down too. And it just brings light, because I know even like my fiance like does not have time to be on social media. Like he dreads it. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do it. No problem. Because I love it. But I think too, it's a testament to what you're saying of setting yourself up for success. So like for the musician, the dancer, like other avenues. And it is something that business owners need, because there's so many things happening behind the scenes, and then you add social media to it. Like you need to be present, like you need to be on camera a lot of times, but how do you manage everything and post and do those things? But I love the service that you've provided, but also what you've been able to grow and really help others have that success. So it's just paying it forward, everything that you've learned.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, social media is not an option nowadays. Like if you want to be a business owner, it's not an option. Like you have to be on social media. Now, like you said, like some people just don't like social media, and like they shouldn't really be penalized because they don't have the time or the passion for social media. But then you need to find a way to hire somebody who does. Do you know what I mean? Like every business, brands now, like if you were going to buy a brand, if you're going to buy a product or a service, 90% of the time people will turn to social media to look up that brand or product, to see, to build that trust, to see if they're online. And if you're not, they're going to go with somebody who is. Do you know what I mean? So you have to be on social media. It's no longer an option, but social media is an asset and it's a tool for a business.
Mic drop. Well said. So from everything you've learned along your journey, because there's been a lot of highs and lows through everything you've done, but what are like the top 2 or 3 tips that you could give us on the entrepreneurial journey?
Okay, my top tips for the entrepreneurial journey is probably the biggest one is like learn to persevere. It is not, and I mean, I know that's really cliche, and you've seen all those diagrams where like success is like a really bumpy road, but there's no better way to say it. Like if you really want to succeed, the amount of times that you're going to want to give up and you're going to want to think it's pointless, it's going to happen. Like it's not easy. I've been there. Like I've been in tears and thinking like, what's the point of all of this? Like, I should just go get a job. Like, it'd be so much easier than having to have all of this, but it's worth it. If you have a dream and you have a vision, it is worth it. But that is why you've got to know your why. You've got to know why you're doing it, so that in those tough times, you persevere. So perseverance is a massive, massive thing. And I guess what comes to that and helps out with perseverance is personal development. If you know who you are, you understand personal development, you understand the mind, you understand habits, you understand how different things impact your energy levels, your mood, your focus. Those are all going to make a massive difference on your entrepreneurial journey. They have to. Like everything kind of fits together. And when I know with me, if my health is not on par, if I'm maybe drinking, being socializing a little bit too much, if I'm not going to the gym as much, my work suffers. My focus suffers, my productivity suffers. And when my work suffers, my stress levels go up. And when my stress levels go up, the tension between me and my partner go up and we tend to fight. So it all kind of fits together. So you've got to understand, you've got to be very, very self-aware. So number 1 tip is on the entrepreneur is obviously perseverance. Learn to persevere and know that tough times don't last, but tough people do. So that's one. The second tip I have for the entrepreneurial journey is get help. You don't have to do it by yourself. Get help. Whether that be like your first coach, whether that be a mentor, whether that be coaching programs, whatever it is, personal development books until you can afford a coach. I don't want to say you cannot do it on your own. You can, but you have to have this. You have to have a different level of perseverance and drive and time to be able to do it by yourself. When you have a coach or you have a support network or you have a community because you're part of the same coaching program or whatever it is, you have that accountability. You have someone to turn to. You have people who can relate to you, because a lot of the times if you're starting a business, you're doing it by yourself. You're maybe the first person in your family to do it. My partner, he's in the military. He's got no idea what happens with running your own business. Like he thinks I sit at home and play on my computer all day and like wonders why I'm tired at 4 o'clock when he comes home. And it's like, I actually work really hard. So you've got to have that support network. So invest in yourself will be the number 1 key. And like, don't reinvent the wheel. Like I say this to my social media managers all the time. And, anybody that wants to start a business, like don't reinvent the wheel when you're picking a niche or picking a business. Like find unless it's like super unique, like an Amazon or an iPhone or something like that, unless it's super unique, find somebody who has done what you want to achieve, pay them to teach you. Pay them to teach you. I'm not a big fan of taking out loans and debt and everything, but I could not afford my first coach, and I put both my first coaches on a credit card. Because I wouldn't have made the money if I didn't get the information that I learned from them, and I was able to pay them off a lot quicker than I would have even been able to pay off the credit card debt that I did have if I didn't hire them, if that makes sense. Yeah. So top 2 tips for an entrepreneurial journey is learn to persevere and understand personal development. You got to be self-aware. And the second one is don't do it alone. Invest in help.
Those are spot on. I've been there, done that as well. And so I would love for you to share 1 or 2 tips when it comes to social media to start going into 2023. I know you've shared a lot as well, but things that maybe aren't as obvious or things that maybe to be aware of for entrepreneurs on the journey, even if they're beginning or in the midst of it.
So when it comes to social media, I think that the number one thing that people don't understand, you got to post reels. You've got to be on video content. You've got to do all of that. But one thing that you've got to understand is either invest or watch YouTube videos or do something, but understand marketing. Understand why people follow one person over another. Why do people engage with this over this? Why do people buy that over that? And most of the time it comes down to like the language that person's using, the way that person's making the buyer feel. You've got to focus on the journey that someone's going on. So any business that you have or any social media presence or business that you're building on social media, you've got to think of it from a place of service. Okay, yes, we're going to build a personal brand. Like I've got my personal brand and people know me. They know I'm a traveler. They know I'm a crazy redhead. They know I've lived in all these sorts of different countries. They know I've worked on cruise ships. But they know that I'm the person to go to for social media. So you can still build a personal brand and have like a niche, but you've got to then understand the niche. Okay, you've got to understand where is my target audience, where are they now and where are they wanting to get to? And how can I help them cross that invisible bridge? When you know that, everything makes creating offers, creating content, creating everything is so much easier when you have a very clear understanding of where people are now. What are they struggling with? What are their frustrations? What do they need help with? And where do they want to go? What do they want to achieve? And it doesn't have to be something dramatic like losing 50 pounds or making $10,000. But, that's what I've always said. I was like, I learned my ABCs. And when I was at point D, I helped someone get from A to B. Yeah. And then as I excelled, I helped someone get from A to C. And as I learned, I helped someone to get from A to D. Do you know what I mean? So learn as you learn, teach people what you know. So that's one thing, like you've really got to understand marketing. The second thing is something that I mentioned earlier is you can't trade on information anymore. Like even courses, courses are an amazing thing. I've got courses, like I've got coaching, all sorts of things, but you can't rely on coaching on information alone because of applications like ChatGPT. You've got to focus on building who you are and building that connection and building a personal brand or a reason for people to follow you. Even if it's a business brand, a reason for people to follow you, because connection and community is what people are going to be after on social media. And then of course the basics is post reels.
Point blank.
Not only that, like obviously like carousels are coming back, like there's so much that is coming back. But if you treat social media like a hobby, it's going to grow like a hobby and it's going to, pay you like a hobby. But if you treat it like you actually, and it doesn't take that much, it really doesn't take that much just to get the hang of it and start posting, but just start. Do you know what I mean? Start posting stuff. And same with your niche. If you're not sure exactly of what that client is journey now, pick something and something will evolve. I started with confidence coaching because I was like, well, I want to be a public speaker. I've got a lot of confidence because I've worked on stages. I've run presentations on stages. What was my method for getting that confidence? Let me teach people how to have more confidence to speak on camera, speak on stages. And I started that, and then I ended up in social media. So start somewhere, pick something, and then roll with it.
That's true. And it evolves. It always evolves too, where like I was saying earlier too, it's you think you're going on this path and then it pivots, but it's meant to pivot. There's a reason behind it, and just trust that. But I agree. Just start, everyone. But I've been so enjoying this conversation, Casey, but we're going to jump into the rapid fire questions if you're ready for them.
Let's go.
Okay. The first question is, who is your hero?
This is a very hard question because as I evolve and as I change, my heroes change, or the people that I look up to change. But my biggest hero, and I got this from Matthew McConaughey, from a speech that he did. And I got goosebumps thinking about it. I don't know if you know the speech I'm talking about, but my biggest hero is me in 5 years' time. Mm-hmm. That person that I want to be. That's my biggest hero. I know who that person is. I know who I want to be. And when I reach that point, my hero is then going to be the person I'm going to be 5 years later. Do you know what I mean? So that's why it's like, I take a lot from a lot of different people, but my biggest hero is like who the person I want to be and who I'm working towards.
I love that. Yes, I'm a huge fan of that speech by far. It just put it in perspective when I first heard it, but I love that.
Yeah.
Great answer. And what motivates you to work smarter?
Experience. Fair enough. I mean, yeah, that comes from experience. I'm all about like working smarter, not harder, like in any way, and finding balance. Like that's one thing that I was not very good at. Like when I was first starting my business, is finding that balance. And I still struggle with it because when I get on a roll with business, like I can shut everything else down, like everything else becomes not as much of a priority. Balance is very, very important for working hard, for working smarter. And again, like I said, everything's interlaced. If one avenue is falling, it often affects like dominoes, it affects other areas. And the same thing like with working smarter is like, don't reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. Like hire someone to teach you how to do the thing that you're trying to learn to do. Don't try and figure it out by yourself. It's just going to take you way longer and it's going to be way more frustrating.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And if you were a superhero, what powers would you have, or power?
I want to fly. I think if I was a superhero, like flying, just because I love to travel. So I'd be like, oh my gosh, if I could get, or teleportation. Actually, I take that back. Teleportation. If I had that power, because then I could just like teleport and see my family one week, teleport back here, teleport to the beach, that would be my superpower, teleportation.
It would have helped when you were going back and forth from Australia.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And what is the most daring thing you've ever done?
I try and do a lot of daring things all the time. I try and push myself out of my comfort zone, but probably the biggest, like most daring, most life-changing thing that I ever did was quitting my corporate job and going to work on cruise ships. That was probably the scariest thing, because the job that I had was very high paying. I was like a national sales manager. I was doing very well for 21 years old. I was doing very, very well. Had a top floor apartment, had the nice car, but I was miserable. Like I was not happy, and I desperately wanted to travel. So giving all of that up and taking the risk to go, just like pack up and go and see what happens, and I could have always come home, but like my job wouldn't have been waiting for me. Do you know what I mean? So it was a big risk. That's one of the most daring things I've ever done. The other thing is traveling solo, like going to travel solo, because, and it's something you got to practice as well. Like I'm very out of practice with it right now because I've been with a partner for so long and I haven't traveled by myself. But if you are single, even if you're not, going to travel by yourself is very scary, and you've got to not scary as in like safety wise, like there's a lot of ways that you can be very, very safe traveling solo, especially as a girl. I mean, scary wise is like thinking you're going to be alone, meeting new people, navigating countries that aren't maybe an English speaking language, like by yourself. You also discover a lot about yourself. You've got to learn, like if you can learn to be happy in your own company, then the confidence and the stability that it gives you will help you in relationships and everything like that, and in friendships. You know, if you're not dependent on anyone but yourself, there's huge lessons that you learn from that. And then obviously, like, you have to get yourself out of your comfort zone, because if you go travel, I don't know if you've ever traveled by yourself, but if you stay in hostels or something like that, you're the only person there, or you're there by yourself. And what you have to do is, it's not like anywhere else. You can't just I can't just go to a bar. Actually, America's different. You kind of can do that here, but like in Australia, you can't just go to the bar and find a table and ask them if you can join them. They'd be like, who are you? And no, why? Whereas when you're traveling, you go down to the communal area, you find a table, you go, hi guys, I'm Casey, do you mind if I sit down? Yeah, absolutely, Casey, tell us where you're from, what are you doing, where are you going? You know, and everybody is like traveling solo. So yeah, probably one of the most daring things I've ever done is just trusting my gut and putting myself in situations that make me uncomfortable, but then also give me those amazing experiences in my life.
It's so empowering. And you're right, I haven't traveled solo out of the country, but other places within the US. And it is very empowering because you are relying on yourself. You're not like, you're planning everything or going with the flow and what you encounter through that. But you're right, it builds this sense of accomplishment, but also confidence as well. Like, yeah, I can do this. I got this. And it builds on a lot of the skills you talked about with relationships and other facets, your business, because you're not afraid to talk to other people or just I'm a very much of an extrovert introvert. So in certain situations, I'm a little more introverted, but when I'm traveling or doing something, it brings out this confidence in me. I'm like, yeah, I got this, no problem. But I think it's what you're saying too. It's so spot on. And it just brings light to having the courage, even with leaving your corporate job to go work on the cruises. That's really could be scary, but it's just that self-belief. Like, I got this. And I think that's been something that you've had your whole life from what I've heard so far.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't born with it. You know, I think having to move country, like growing up in South Africa, you have to have a certain level of street smarts. You have to grow up quite quickly, and then moving countries, luckily that, I think that made a massive difference. But I mean, anybody can do it. You just have to, it's a skill that you have to learn. And it's something. So yeah, if you've always been in the small town, buy yourself a one-way ticket to a big city and go travel by yourself and just see what happens. You might hate it, and that's okay. Then you go home, but at least you did it. You'll feel very empowered that you actually did it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for sharing both of those. And what is the phone app you use the most?
Instagram.
I mean, I didn't want to assume.
Yeah. Probably a phone app I use the most. It's funny, I just got a new phone, so I've just had to upload all my reload all my new apps. I went from Android to iPhone. My social media is probably my biggest one. My social media and my email, just anywhere I'm connected with everybody else and other people, those are the most apps. But I think if we were going to talk about the best tools to use, Notion. I don't know if you know what Notion is, but Notion I am obsessed with. It is just a project management, note-taking, database, Excel sheet, everything. My entire business is now based on Notion. And you can use it on the desktop. It's actually a desktop app, but there's the phone app as well. It's just amazing. If you haven't heard of Notion, go learn Notion. It will change your life. Other than that, yeah, just messages and social media, my main apps I use.
I mean, it makes sense. It's on brand.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't spend a lot of time on my phone, to be honest. I really try to, because I mean, there's so much going on social media all the time that my phones are constantly blowing up with notifications. So whenever it's a very big distractor to me. So whenever I don't need to look at my phone, I always put it down. Other than that, Spotify. There we go. There's one that's kind of social media, but not. Spotify is probably my most used app.
It's a good one. Yeah. Very multifaceted. And what is the last book that you've read or listened to?
Good question. I've been very deep into podcasts and YouTube videos as of late. The last book I actually read was by, I think, Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. That was one book that I recently read. I've read 3 times Alex Hormozi's $1 Million Offers. just because it's marketing and like that's like my jam. Outside of that, the last book that I listened to was Harry Potter. So every year I listen to like the whole series of Harry Potter. Like it's just something so easy, like if I'm driving or I just need to switch off or I can't sleep at night, instead of turning the TV on, like it's just the one thing that I can listen to that I just get lost in that world. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. So
I've actually never read all the books or like seen all the movies. I know. I was like worried to tell you.
You're breaking my heart.
I know.
Oh my God, they're so good. But you know, I grew up with them. So like as I grew, like the characters grew. So you know, it's very much my generation, but it's just my little world of getting lost, my little world to get lost in when I need a switch off time.
I think that's important. We need that, like more like business book versus like more fun and lighthearted, and also just takes us out of the everyday too.
Yep. 1,000%.
And if you had to describe yourself as an animal, personality type, what animal would you be?
I'd have to be some sort of like wild cat, I think. Like I'd have to, not that I would ever see myself as a cat, but like something like a panther or a tiger or something like that. Something that's strong, but like graceful and like simple, but at the same time, like don't mess with me. Kind of thing. That's I'd have to be like a panther or a tiger or something like that.
I could see that. And what is your favorite way to spend a day off? Even if you don't have a full day off, but a few hours, what do you like to do?
I mean, I'm going to say travel is like the number one thing I like to do. Me and my partner are very big. We're very big social people. So we like to go and either socialize with friends. Not that we have a very big friends group, but one of the other things, not that like we're trying to like cut back on drinking at the moment, but one of our favorite things would be to go to a new town and then go like restaurant hopping and bar hopping. And we just really love that. Like we like craft beer and we like sitting and we'll always sit at the bar. And that's what I love about America is like you can't do this in Australia, but actually sit at the bar and talk to the other people at the bar and you know, talk to the bartenders and all sorts of things. So that's probably one of our favorite things to do is just go out and have a couple of drinks or go socialize with people. Or now that we're not really drinking this year, it's more like exercising and traveling.
All great things. And what is something an outsider wouldn't know about your industry?
Ooh, that's a good one. An outsider. Maybe, I mean, if we're talking about social media, like maybe how important it actually is. Like people take social media for granted and they think, you know, oh my gosh, like you're just dancing around on reels all day. Like that's not a real job. And it's like, well, actually, it is, because you're making other people feel good. You're providing value that could help them. You know, there's a lot that goes into it. So, I mean, I guess that's a really hard question in terms of like an outsider. But I think maybe another thing is like people who, if we're coming from the perspective of like owning your own business, somebody that doesn't own their own business, something that they don't know is like how possible it actually is for them. Like how possible it actually is. Like you don't have to stay in the job that you're in if you don't like it. Every single person can start their own online business. They're not going to be perfect for every type of business, but in this digital world, there's no reason why somebody can't start their own freelance business, YouTube channel, cooking channel, podcast, like whatever it is, and make yourself some online income. Like there's absolutely no reason.
Yeah, you heard it here, everyone. Casey, where can people find you? Use your services. We're going to link everything below, but if you could let us know too.
Yeah, of course. So social media, Instagram is like my number one place. At the moment, you can find me on Instagram at Casey_Iola_. From there, you will see I am going to be starting that new page and starting to transition everything over to the new page, which is just going to be Casey Iola _. So it's not that different, like people would be able to find it, but I do have both of those pages. So that's the number one place to find me there. All my details of all my offers, so like the Glow and Grow Academy, which is a membership, which is the Instagram stuff, that's available on there. Or if you want to start your own business as a social media manager, the information's on there. And obviously my DMs are always open, so you can message me at any time, and I'll always be there to answer your questions or help you out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Casey, for just sharing all your authenticity, your transparency through this interview. But it's been such a joy to have you. I so appreciate it for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been amazing.
Absolutely. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment below. What was the biggest takeaway from Casey today? She had so many different tips and tricks and everything you need to know when it comes to social media and the journey of entrepreneurship. And we will see you on the next video.